Every building on this world is standing on top of another one. Nobody living here knows that. Right now, 4 kilometers outside a city of 90,000 people, a man is shoveling white powder out of a cliff face. In his shovel, there's a curved piece of shell the size of a dinner plate, smooth on one side, ribbed on the other. It's a piece of a roof. He tips it onto the spoil heap without looking, the way you'd flick away a pebble. Above him, that cliff runs 6 kilometers along the horizon, and it has 6 colored bands in it. In 4 of them, you can see the cut ends of bridges. How does a whole civilization forget itself? Once would be a tragedy. This world has done it 5 times. This is what we found on VESTIGIA Prime, and we're still trying to understand it. Everything we found here was buried, and every single time we dug, we found the same thing again, just older. We came down at dawn on a river plain in harvest season. The ground took our boots and held them. Real mud, the kind that pulls. Mist in the low fields, air warm and wet, smelling like cut grass and river silt. And under that, faint, something sweet. Vance noticed it first and couldn't place it. None of us could. We logged it and forgot about it. That was the first mistake, and it took us 4 days to understand it was one. The fields climbed away from the river in steps. Not hills, steps. Each terrace a hand's width higher than the last, running flat to the horizon. Somebody built those, a lot of somebodies, over a very long time. Then we saw the first house, and we stopped talking. The color of a terracotta pot, no corners on it anywhere, no straight lines. Every wall curving up into the roof like something poured, then set. The door was shaped like a teardrop. Okafor put her palm flat against the outside wall, pulled it back, and said one word. Warm. Warm the way a fingernail is warm. They came out to meet us, and they weren't afraid. They stand a little taller than we do. Dry, pebbled skin, the color of fired clay, 2 big amber eyes set forward, 5 working fingers, and a low ridge running down the outside of each forearm. That ridge is the whole story of this planet, and it took us a day to see it. They don't quarry stone. They don't cut trees. They have no metal at all. Not a nail, not a blade, not a pot. Every house and boat and bridge and market stall on this world comes out of those ridges. They secrete it, a thick pale liquid that sets hard in 6 hours. A coral reef is made the same way. The animal lays down a scaffold, grows mineral onto it, and the reef is what's left behind. These people do it on purpose, which means the best builder in a village isn't the one with the best tools. It's the one whose body makes the best material. We watched a mother teaching her son to lay his first line. He was waist-high to her. She held his forearm at the angle, and he shook, and the line came out crooked and thin. She scraped it off with her thumb and put his arm back. They did it 11 times. She never once let go. Hold on to that. It matters on the 4th night. The city sits on a mound at the bend of the river, a wide, low sprawl of ivory and orange, thousands of domes, none over 4 stories, spreading sideways instead of up. 90,000 people and not one tower. These people have never had a reason to look down on each other from a height. Sato was the one who noticed the walls. Every building, in every district, has a base 3 times thicker than the rest. It doesn't match the loads. It doesn't match anything. It's just done by everyone. Sato asked a mason why through the translator. He shrugged and said, "That's how you build a wall. A wall built the other way is a bad wall. That's not a reason. That's an inherited habit with the reason burned out of it. It's knocking on wood. Somebody once learned something the hard way, and the lesson outlived the memory of the lesson. We just didn't know yet that it eats from the bottom up. At the center of the city, there's a square, and in the middle of the square, there's a pillar, 12 meters, as tall as a 4-story building, which here makes it the tallest thing anyone has ever stood next to. It's dark. Dark all the way through, and heavy, and there isn't one scratch on it anywhere. Around the base, thousands of cloth ribbons are tied in layers, sun-bleached down to gray. And it took us 3 more days to register the obvious. It's the only object on this planet that isn't made of shell. We asked who put it there. They laughed. Not at us, at the question. Nobody put it there. It's just there. You touch it before a journey. There's writing on it, bands of ridged symbols running around it horizontally, and no one alive can read a mark. Okafor stood in front of it a long time that afternoon. Then she said, quietly, "Somebody made this out of something that doesn't rot." We all heard her. None of us picked it up, because that night was the harvest festival and the drums had already started. The festival matters more than any of the ruins. Oil lamps in every window. Amber light out of 10,000 doorways at once. Kids running between the legs of adults with strips of cloth for the pillar. Drums, and a low 3-note horn made from a rolled shell. Food we couldn't eat, offered anyway, 4 times, insistently. A city of 90,000 people having a very good year. And near the end, the old ones sang. When a Vestigian gets old, the ridges on their forearms flatten out and go dry. They stop producing. In a civilization where your worth is literally what your body makes, the ones who've stopped making are at the bottom. Gray, cracked skin, wrapped in old cloth instead of fresh shell. They eat at the edge of the market, on charity, and everyone is kind to them the way you're kind to furniture. But once a year they stand in front of the pillar and sing. It's a hard, clipped rhythm and it runs about 9 minutes, and the words don't mean anything. We asked 4 people and got the same answer. The old song. Nobody knows what it says. You sing it before the harvest. Sato recorded it anyway, because Sato records everything. That recording is the reason we can tell you any of this. On the 3rd morning, we went out to the cliff with the stone cutters. A small guild, 30 or 40, living outside the walls because of the dust. Broad shoulders, hands like leather, flat groundstone goggles. Their clothes are striped. Bands of colored dust settled in layers from working different heights of the rock face. They carry the cliff around on their backs and never think about it. The wall is 300 meters high. Numbers don't land, so stand at the bottom, and the men on the top rim are too small to have faces. It runs from one end of the sky to the other, like a scar somebody put across the continent. And it is striped, 6 bands, top to bottom. Pale cream, a gray ash layer, dusty purple-brown, ochre, a deep red, then blue-gray where it goes into the ground. That's not decoration, that's time. And in the bottom 4, there are things in the rock. The cut end of a barrel vault, sliced clean, the curve of it is obvious as a drawing. 40 meters along, a section of pipe with a socketed joint. Below that, in the red band, the cross-section of a bridge deck cut clean through, handrail still attached. We walked the base of that cliff for 6 hours, counting down. Okafor kept saying it under her breath. Different, but the same. The vault in band 4 is rounder than the ones in the city behind us. The pipe joint is cruder. The material is identical. The technique is identical. Somewhere in the 4th hour, Ria stopped. She'd put a hand out to steady herself against the fossil bridge deck in the red band. There was a dip in the rail, a smooth, worn hollow, right where a hand falls. That morning, walking into the city, she'd run her palm along a bridge rail and felt exactly that hollow, in exactly that spot, worn by people who were at that moment walking over it, 4 kilometers away. Same place, same height, 3 cycles apart. But this was only the surface. What came next, we were not ready for. Behind the red band there was a void. The cutters had opened it years ago, decided it was worthless, and walled it off with rubble. We sent a drone in first. The first images any human ever saw of a 9,000-year-old Vestigian room came back as a shaky, color-shifted drone feed with the gain cranked all the way up. A curved ceiling, a spiral ramp instead of stairs. The same ramp they still build today because their hands climb better than their feet walk. A doorway shaped like a teardrop. And on one wall, at waist height, a shelf with 3 round objects sitting where somebody set them down. Then Sato went in on a line. The air in there was 9,000 years old and it smelled like nothing at all. She stood in a room, in a house, on a street, in a city that is now 400 meters of solid rock, and said over the comm, "It's the same house, same doors, same ramps, same thick base on the walls. They'd done all of this before, exactly like this. And then it went into the ground, and their descendants came back up and built it again the same way, never knowing they were repeating themselves. The old one's song was still sitting in Sato's recorder. We just hadn't put those 2 things next to each other yet. We came back into the city on the fourth afternoon, and Vance found it. He wasn't looking for it. He was leaning on a grain store wall out of the rain, and the wall gave slightly under his shoulder. A dark, damp patch the size of a spread hand with a faint purple rim. He pressed it, and the surface didn't crack. It dented like wet cardboard. When he pulled his hand back, his palm was dusted with a fine powder that used to be a wall. Okafor had it under a scope in 11 minutes and went very quiet. It's a fungus, slow, thread-thin, growing in the top 2 millimeters of the shell. And it carries an enzyme that takes apart the one material this world is made of. Here's the part you should know is real. On Earth, for something like 60 million years, trees made wood and nothing could digest it. Lignin, the stuff that makes wood stiff, was, for a long stretch of the Carboniferous, effectively indestructible. Dead trees didn't rot, they piled up. That's where most of the world's coal came from. The buried remains of a time when the decomposers hadn't caught up yet. Then a lineage of fungi evolved the enzymes to take lignin apart, and that era ended and never came back. The clock had run out here too. Not for the first time. Once we knew what to look for, we found 19 more patches in an afternoon. Grain stores, bridge footings, the base of the market dome. All of them low, all of them in the damp, because it eats from the bottom up. That's what the thick walls are for. Then there were the rasp, 6-legged, low-backed, about the size of a pig, with a rasping horn plate for a mouth. They come in packs of 30. They don't touch people or food. They put their faces against a wall and scrape. And the Vestigians hate them with a passion that doesn't match anything the animals actually do. They aren't attacking the buildings. They're following the fungus. It's what they eat, and they can smell it through a foot of shell. Every Vestigian alive knows in their gut that a pack of rasp at your door means the house is finished. They just have it backwards. They think the animals bring the rot. The animals are the alarm. That evening, with the drums going for the third night, Okafor looked up at the market dome, the biggest structure in the city and the oldest still standing, and asked one question. How long has that one been up? 200 years, they told her, proudly. It was the only building old enough to have started rotting before anyone alive was there to see it start. We tried to tell them. It didn't go the way it goes in a story. There was no wise elder who understood. There was a district steward, polite and busy, with a festival running, and 4 strangers with no shell on their arms telling him his grandfather's market was going to come down. He asked how we knew. We showed him the powder. He said walls get damp. He was right. Walls do get damp. He'd seen damp walls his whole life and none of them had ever fallen. That's the thing about a 9,000-year cycle. Nobody has ever seen one. There's no word for it. There's a thick wall base and a song nobody understands. And that's all that made it across. Riaz stopped asking permission. It started as a sound. A long, low groan out of the ribs of the dome. The sound a rope makes before it goes. The drums stopped. 900 people under one roof, all looking up at once. Vance had run the math on the way over and said 20 minutes. He said he was guessing. There are 4 entrances to that market. 2 of them are wide. Vance and Sato took the wide ones and kept them clear, because in a crowd that size, the doorway is more dangerous than the ceiling. Riaz went in. He doesn't speak the language. He had a translator box and about 200 words. He got up on a stall table and used the same 3 words over and over, and when the far side didn't move, he waded in and started turning people toward the doors with he hands. Okafor went for the old ones. They sit at the edge. They don't move fast. And in the first 30 seconds of a panic, nobody thinks about them at all. She got 11 out, went back, and got 4 more. The mother from the first morning came past her, going the wrong way, and Okafor caught her arm, and she pulled free, because her son was somewhere behind her in it. The dome came down in 3 pieces over about 40 seconds. It didn't shatter. That's the part that stays with me. It sagged, folded, and came apart into dust and soft fragments, like something eaten from the inside for 100 years and only now admitting it. We got most of them out, not all. The morning after, the square was empty. Gray light, fine ivory dust over everything, people moving through it slowly, carrying pieces. The mother was sitting on the terrace steps with her son, holding a scrape on his forearm closed with her thumb. They were both fine. I've thought about that a lot. That we know they were fine, and there are others we don't know that about, and the pillar stood in the middle of it, untouched, not a scratch, ribbons still tied around the base, filthy with dust. That's when Sato said it. She'd been up all night with the festival recording and the cymbal bands off the pillar, side by side on one screen. The song has 9 sections. The pillar has 9 bands. The rhythm of the first section maps onto the first band, mark for mark, stress for stress. So does the second. So do all 9. The old song isn't a song. It's the pillar, memorized. Somebody in the cycle before this one worked out what was coming and understood that anything they wrote it on would rot because everything they had was the same doomed material. They made one object out of something else, something dark and heavy we still can't identify, and put a warning on it. And because they knew their writing wouldn't survive either, they did the only other thing you can do. They set it to music and made their children sing it. It got across. 9,000 years, 500 generations, through a total collapse, and it arrived intact, and nobody could read it anymore. They'd been singing the instructions for their own survival, once a year, in front of the answer, as a party song. We were wrong about the wall. We'd been counting 6 bands and calling them 6 civilizations, each rising out of the ruins of the last. Okafor was the one who checked the bones. There are bones in that cliff. Not many, and not exposed. Sealed in the rock, intact, the way things end up when a world buries them fast and gently. She had scans from 4 different bands. Same skeleton, same forearm ridges, same everything. It isn't 6 civilizations. It's one people who have built the same city out of their own bodies 6 separate times and forgotten it 5. A circle with a very long circumference and no memory of its own shape. And they can't remember because they write on the one thing that always, eventually, gets eaten. There's a paper on Earth. Gavin Schmidt at NASA and Adam Frank, 2018. Asking a question that sounds like a joke and isn't. If an industrial civilization had existed here a few 100 million years ago, would we be able to tell? Their answer, roughly, almost certainly not. Fossils are rare. The surface recycles itself. Cities don't keep. What survives isn't a ruin. It's a chemical smudge in a layer of rock, and you'd have to already suspect it was there to go looking. They're careful to say this doesn't mean it happened. It means we're bad at checking. We used to file that away as a nice thought experiment. Then we stood at the bottom of a cliff on Vestigia and counted the bridges. And here's what I keep coming back to. We build in concrete and steel and glass and assume those are permanent, because inside one human lifetime they are. And there's one more thing we make everything out of now. Packaging, pipes, clothes, the housing of the device you're watching this on. In 2016, a team working near a recycling plant in Japan pulled a bacterium out of the sediment. They called it Ideonella sakiensis. It has 2 enzymes that take PET plastic apart, and it eats what's left. We've only been making that plastic in bulk since about the 1950s. It took less than a single human lifetime for something to develop an appetite for the material that defines our entire era. The Vestigians didn't lose their history to a war, or an asteroid, or a god. They lost it because they built everything out of one substance and never asked how long that substance had. We've never asked either. We left one thing behind. On the last morning, 11 of the old ones were still with us out at the ship. Sato played the recording back to them section by section, next to the marks on the pillar, and showed them the match. Translating it is a project for a generation, and they'll have to invent a way to write it down that doesn't rot. We couldn't tell them how, but the ones who sing it now know it says something. That's more than anyone here has had in 9,000 years. And there's one line we couldn't place. The last band on the pillar is shorter than all the others, half the marks. It doesn't map onto any part of the song, and the old ones have no 9th section to sing. Somewhere at the end of the 5th cycle, somebody added one more short line to the warning, and whoever was supposed to carry it didn't. We don't know what it says, neither do they, and the 7th cycle is going to have to guess. We left VESTIGIA Prime behind, but it did not leave us. Somewhere ahead, another world is waiting, and the Aurelia is already moving toward it. The next signal came from a rock with no atmosphere at all, No air, no weather, nothing to bury anything, and nothing to wear it away. A world where nothing has been erased in 4 billion years. If Vestigia was a place that lost everything, this one has kept every single thing that ever happened to it. We were already changing course. If you want to travel with us aboard the Aurelia, subscribe. A new world every week.